Welcome to Run, Walk, Talk, Tales of Inclusion and Development. I'm Judy, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm here with Steph, and her pronouns are she and her. And today we're going to be having a conversation about core values. So, as usual, Steph, I think we can dive right in. And I think it's worth starting by defining what we mean by core values. And we're really talking about beliefs or principles that are deeply held. And we know that many companies have core values and they're often, posted to their website, and it's things like integrity or teamwork. And it's really important for organizations to have values
Mhm.
and really be able to explain what the value means and what it looks like in action. I'm thinking of, a common one, integrity, and it might mean to the employees, we tell the truth even when it's hard. And then the company can provide examples to the employees on when to use it. So it might be like if we make a mistake, we own up to it and
Mhm.
and we have a conversation around it. And you and I could probably have a whole podcast devoted to organizational values, but today we really want to talk about personal core values.
Yeah.
And just like the organizational core values, they're really beliefs or principles that are held, but by you or
Yeah.
by whomever's listening. They're values that are meaningful, and they're really those things that we don't compromise on. So if you do compromise, it can make you feel like something's amiss,
Yeah.
and it's often because you're, not living by your values. And we discuss this topic when we're out running, and I know that we each have our own core values, and they've really been helpful to us. And we use them as a guide for decision making, both personally and professionally. So, can you share what are your core values, and
Yeah.
how did you come to recognize and define these? How did you arrive at them?
Yeah. Yeah. I love talking about core values because I do think unfortunately a lot of people don't actually stop and think about what their values are because it takes sort of some time. And I discovered my core values probably a few years ago when I went through Minerva, their Women Leading the Way program, and that I
Hmm.
really took some time to kind of sit down and think about what were my core values. And I looked at a list. I've also looked at sort of one tool, so everybody knows Mind Tools, mindtools.com. They
Mm.
go through and they talk about what your core values are. Uh, but really having that sort of space. So my three are I have three. So I have equity, connection, and fun. And now those three, what they mean to me, so equity with the work that I do every day is really around fairness. And I will say, even when I started thinking about and why I came up with equity, growing up, my father was really about fairness and what was fair and unfair and kind of just. And so that was really interesting to sort of like that's a strong one for me. Um, the connection piece, I really love people. Like, I love hearing people's stories. I find their experiences so interesting and being able to connect and build relationships with people, um, is really important to me. And I found it hard with the pandemic when we didn't have things going on externally to kind of connect. And over Zoom, it's not as great as it
It's
is in
different.
person, right? It's just
Yeah.
different. And then that fun piece, I really like joy and humor, and I find my work can be, it's quite stressful and challenging, and it's very heavy. And so being able to bring in a bit of laughter, and joy and fun in my day. So yeah, those were my three that have been probably fairly consistent. What about you? What are yours?
Well, yeah, so I have a few more. I'm trying to
Okay.
narrow it down to three because I think that's very wise. And like you, I came to my values as a result of the Minerva Women Leading the Way program, which is a number of years ago. And mine are collaboration, growth,
Mm.
integrity, kindness, and communication. So I've got five,
Mm.
but I also
Mm-hmm.
have two overarching values, I call them, and they are wellness and beauty. Because
Mm.
to me, I mean, everything comes from wellness, health, whether it's,
Yeah.
physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And then the beauty comes from, I love in my environment, as I define it, beauty. So I love art, I love architecture, I love design. And so having things in my environment that make me happy, um,
Mm-hmm.
I see that as a guiding principle. And like you, I've tweaked them a little bit over the years. I used to, for example, instead of growth, I had learning as a
Mm-hmm.
core value.
Yeah.
And I came to realize that what's actually important to me isn't so much learning, although I do love learning and taking classes and reading books and having conversations. To me, at the end of the day, I realize it's more about growth and
Mm-hmm.
getting better and improving, at the end of the day. And so that value, I adjusted a little bit. And I think you're right. I think those values likely stay consistent, but as we change and evolve, it's good, I think, to take a look at the values.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to make adjustments to them, as the years go on. And what I liked about the Minerva program is, and I'm not sure if it was the same when you went through, because we went through in different cohorts.
Mm-hmm.
We were given, I think, a Word document, and it had like three or
Yeah.
four pages of words.
Yes.
And then you
Yeah.
go through and you circle ones that resonate, and then you narrow down to 10 words, and then they have you narrow down to, 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really cool. But I love the website that you're mentioning because that's a really easy way for people. And it's
Yeah.
just another tool that I think is really helpful. So for you, how have your values influenced decisions and choices that you've made, both personally and professionally?
Yeah. So I think professionally, I would say when I started looking for a new role, going from my previous company to the one that I'm at now, uh, you know, looking at kind of the job was they were looking for their first equity, diversity, and inclusion director. So, of course, that equity piece is in the title, which sort of made sense. I also found going through the interview process, I was able to connect with a lot of people, and thought about that sort of that culture piece of what I would, be doing every day and working with others. So, those were the two that kind of sort of helped me professionally.
Hmm.
Uh, Personally, I will say, so this is, back in 2010, 2011, and, my husband and I, we were trying to have a second child, and I was going through IVF sort of fertility treatments, and we tried to do, you know, usually before, for anybody listening or watching this, before you go straight to full IVF, there's typically other sort of treatments or drugs that you do that isn't as it, invasive, shall we say. And so I went through this period and I got to the sort of this end of it, and I get this phone call from the clinic that said, "You're not pregnant,
Oh,
unfortunately." They had only put in one egg. None of the other eggs had sort of survived or put that you could sort of freeze. And I'd
right.
have to start all over again. And it was that period in my life where um, I didn't feel connected. Like it felt like a very sort of lonely, isolating time.
Hmm.
um, I definitely thought from an equity lens it was not fair, but this is what I
Hmm.
was, going through. And there was that
Hmm.
rub around, I can't do this anymore,
Hmm.
right? That, I was like, that's it. And that's where I kind of, taking that time to think about what's important. And we were very fortunate enough to have a child prior. So this would have been our second child. And I just said, no more. I mean, she's 16 today. It's wonderful. We didn't ever have another child, but that it was an interesting time, and not that I had my core values then, but that's really sort of how it showed up in that rub of that disconnection. Like it was a very
Hmm.
lonely time.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
about you?
Well, I mean, before I dive into that, I just want to go back to what you were saying because I think it's a really important point around connection and,
Yeah.
feeling like you didn't have a community, maybe to share what
Yeah.
you were going through,
Yeah.
it's very aware that you noticed. as you were going through that, that something wasn't feeling right. And you needed probably to share and feel that sense of community,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
goes to your connection piece. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I have them written down where I can see them. I need to see them every day because I find that if I can see them, it stays top of mind to me. And then I rely on them both in work and personal, but
Mm.
if I'm having conflict with another person, that's often where it will
Mm.
most show up for me when I want to lean into my
Yeah.
values. And for me, one of my values is kindness. And it,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that I
Mm.
don't think of it as being nice. I think of
Mm-hmm.
kindness and being nice as being a little bit different. I mean, kindness to me means you're compassionate, you're being empathetic, you're trying to stay out of judgment. And I say try because that can be a challenge for me sometimes. But it's
Yeah.
also being truthful and candid. And to me, kindness is actually speaking one's mind. Whereas I always think of people when they say that, they're being nice, maybe they're kind of skirting around issues
Yeah.
that they want to raise. And because kindness is important to me, and I can go into judgment sometimes, seeing the value, having it on paper somewhere that I can see it,
Yeah.
it reminds me if I'm in conflict, a reminder to be kind. Kind to the person that I'm in conflict with, but also kind to myself, because
Mm-hmm.
conflict can be difficult. And if I'm feeling judgy or I'm feeling angry, um, that's to me when I think about I'm not living and there's some sort of value conflict, something's
Yes.
not right here.
Yeah.
And and I think that leads nicely into, why is it essential for you to identify and align with your values? What benefits have you personally gained from living in accordance to your values?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what, I just want to go back to that sort of that piece that you were talking about with that sort of kindness and when things aren't going well. It's like this rub, or it's like this misalignment, or like a puzzle piece is out of place, you know?
Yes.
You know,
Yes. I love that
and it's a
analogy.
feeling. You know, it
Hmm.
just, for me, it sort of shows up as that kind of like you're annoyed, but you don't know exactly why,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
So for me, living in my values just means like life is calmer.
Hmm.
That and I won't even go as so much to say that it's kind of like in the flow state, but it just feels more balanced. Things do seem a little bit, they're easier. I don't question things as much. And I think when I'm out like not aligned with my values, there's the questioning, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? That judgment piece. Uh yeah. Yeah, what
Well, and
about you?
the values can help you answer those questions. So if
Yeah,
you've got the values to look at, it can help answer those questions of where do I want to go? What do I want to do?
that's
Why are
right.
things feeling
That's right.
off? They can provide some guidance. Um, I mean, for me, and I think you were touching on this, it provides really that North Star. And I think of that
Mm,
book
mm-hmm,
by Bill George, True North, and he really
mm,
advocates, and I would just say that for anybody who wants to delve into this topic, that's a really great book if you're looking for something to get started with values. But he really speaks of the importance of leaders knowing what their core values are and really using that as an internal compass. And so I think for me, it means that you know what you stand for
yeah,
and you're not
that's
going
right.
to just kind of go whatever way the wind
Mm-mm,
blows.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I think it allows us to have more connection and be more deeply connected with one another. I know one of the things that our team did at work is we did a values exercise as a team, and we came up with our team values, but we also shared with each other our personal values, our core personal values. And it just gives this nice insight into understanding what's important to other members of the team, to our colleagues.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And it can give some insight
mm-hmm.
sometimes into if somebody's feeling really strongly about something, why they might be feeling strongly about it
Yes,
because it's a particular value that's being impacted for them.
yeah.
So, Steph, we always finish with something that we have learned throughout the course of our conversation. So perhaps I'll go to you first. Is there any, throughout the course of our conversation, is there anything that really resonated with you or anything that in particular you're taking away?
Yeah, there's actually a couple things. One, I'd like to sort of put my values kind of on a piece of paper in front of me because I don't always have them there. So I think that's one thing that I'd like to do. And then two, I think so the book was called True North.
Yeah, True North by Bill George.
Okay, so I've got to put that on my list. I've read a lot, but I have not read that one.
It's
So
worth it. It's worth
that's on
it.
my list. And for
That's great.
you?
Well, I can't help but thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that personal story.
Mm,
So that's something I think I'm going to be taking away that you shared that. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people who feel the same, that we're looking for connection.
yeah,
And when things happen that are personal, sometimes we may feel disconnected, and it may be because we need to build some community of people who um, understand what we're going through. So that's a
yeah.
takeaway for me. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.